we'll see what happens. Okay, so these are the leftover questions from yesterday. So we'll do those first, and then we'll move on to the second batch afterwards. So the first one here is about the creator God. Your point on creator gods makes sense to me. For some of us who lack the courage to look within and see, address our defilements, it is easier to outsource forgiveness outwards. Yes. Could you share on how to forgive without increasing attachment to self? Thank you for the guidance, Ajahn. Excuse me, just finishing off this little lozenge. I did talk about this a little bit yesterday, about how to forgive without attaching to the self. The idea of forgiving oneself is precisely to understand that there is no self. Yeah, this is kind of really how you learn to forgive, because you learn to understand that you are the victim of cause and conditions. You are a victim of some kind of unfathomable past and all the habits that you have built up over time. And when you see yourself as a victim in that way, that there is no self that is solid, that always guides you, that is always there, standing like a pillar and giving you directions, and you can start to have compassion for yourself and also forgive yourself because of that. And it's useful to contemplate this a little bit. Yeah? What does it mean? Because it feels like we're making choices. It feels like we are responsible for, how we act and these kind of things. But sometimes it is useful to look at life like a long time ago. Say you look at yourself, what you were like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. Yeah? And you look back at the choices you made then, yeah, at that point in time, long time ago. And then when you look back, it doesn't look like choices quite in the same way anymore. If you look at your life, it seems almost like things kind of fall into place. It's almost like a trajectory, yeah, and certain cause and conditions are there. And it seems like it was almost inevitable that things took the course that they have taken now. So I think we get more perspective by looking back, and we see with greater clarity how conditioned we actually are. That those choices were not really autonomous or individual choices that we made, but they were in large part conditioned by various factors, including our own deep, unfathomable past lives or whatever. They're all there. And then you can forgive yourself because you realize that actually I'm trapped. Everyone is trapped to a very large extent. And then we want to come out of that trap. And that is a very large part of what the Buddhist path is about. Coming out of the trap of habits and deep conditioning. Yeah, so hopefully that will help you a little bit. So no need to attach to a non-existing self. 𝐵𝑢𝑑𝑑𝑐𝑡 talks of greed, aversion, and delusion. Why not hatred? Is it because aversion includes fear? Okay, so I think the usual translation by 𝐵𝑢𝑑𝑑𝑐𝑡 is actually hatred and not aversion. And let me just check. I think this is one particular translation that he makes, but normally he talks about greed, hatred, and delusion. So I'm not sure why he talks about this in this way. Maybe it's a bit difficult for me to look it up right here and now, so I think I will just leave it to one side actually. But the normal translation that 𝐵𝑢𝑑𝑑𝑐𝑡 uses greed, hatred, and delusion. Why he uses aversion sometimes, I'm not sure. But to my mind, aversion and hatred are slightly different things. Hatred is like a strong form of ill will, wanting to destroy something and having a really negative view of someone. Aversion is the opposite of desire. Yeah, you desire something and you are repelled by something. That's what aversion is. And the idea of desire and aversion is better expressed in the formula for sense restraint. Yeah, you have the formula for sense restraint. You have Vinaya Loke Abhijja Domanassa is the Pali phrase. It means having given up desire and aversion for the world, or in regard to the world. That's where aversion fits in. It has to do with desire. We desire certain things and we are repelled and we reject other things. Ill will and hatred is slightly different. Anyway, so I hope that is works. So I think I know whose questions these are, so I'm going to skip them because I think they have been answered already. So I will put this one to one side. This is also one. So we'll leave it to one side. Okay, please tell us about astrophysics and Buddhism. Okay, I'll tell you a few things that are kind of interesting about how the Buddha seems to talk about the universe, right? One of the things that he says when he talks about the recollection of past lives, he talks about recalling the past lives, 1 life, 2 lives, 100,000 lives, whatever. And then he talks about an eon of world expansion, eon of world contraction, an eon of both world contraction and expansion. Actually, it's more like world evolution and world involution, the opposite of evolution. The Pali words are 𝑣ivadati and samvadati. And the word vat means to roll or to evolve. Yeah, the Latin word for rolling is volve, like the word volvo means to roll, quite literally. And so the Pali word is almost exactly the same as the English word evolve. Yeah, 𝑣ivadati actually almost literally means to evolve. And samvadati is the opposite to the opposite of evolution, which might be involution or whatever. And so it is hard to know what it actually means, the expansion or contraction of the universe. It's difficult because evolution and involution can mean different things in English language, but it seems the most likely thing. And what is kind of fascinating, if you start to calculate the number of years that this actually goes on, the way you can calculate that, the suttas actually give you the lifespans of the devas in the various realms, right? And when we start to calculate these lifespans in the devas of the various realms, going all the way up to the Brahma realm, the Brahma realm beings are supposed to exist for 1 eon, and you make the calculation, and you get something like 36 billion years. Yeah, 36 billion years. We know now that the universe has existed for about, 12.5 billion years, something like that, since the Big Bang. And that is only 1 going out. If you multiply that by 2, because it also had to contract, you get 25 billion. Expansion hasn't stopped yet. It starts to look very similar to 36 billion years, right? Which is kind of extraordinary here. That a simple calculation that should yield a result which is even ballpark closely to what the actual figure is. So the Buddha talks about world expansion and world contraction. How could he possibly know about these things? How is that even possible? And again, we have to remember that sometimes we think of the Buddha as somebody very supernatural, very extraordinary. But we have to remember he was a human being. So somehow he had to use his mind, and his mind was like our mind, except it was more purified. Yeah, he had to use this ordinary mind to see the contraction and expansion of the universe. Anyone here who can see the contraction and expansion of the universe? It's remarkable, right? It's kind of extraordinary. But you can start to understand it if you start to remember that you can be reborn into these very high realms. And from the vantage point of these very high realms, you may be able to observe some of these phenomena in real time almost, seeing things happening in the universe. And this may have been what the Buddha did, kind of getting this bird's eye view of what is happening in the cosmos. So that is kind of extraordinary and really hard to explain how the Buddha could have talked about this. Another thing I was mentioning yesterday was the idea of the sun expanding, right? The idea of, this is called the 7 Suns Sutta, and it's not clear whether it is 7 suns altogether or 7 stages of a sun. it looks to me that it may very well refer to 7 stages. And so this is the idea of the sun getting hotter and hotter and hotter until it burns up the earth. And again, it's very, very hard to understand how the Buddha could have understood this. Another thing that the Buddha talks about in the suttas is what he called the loka dhatu, which literally means like a world system. And the loka dhatu consists of like the earth, yeah. The way the earth is described is like India and the various continents. So that's basically means the earth. And then you have the moon, and then you have the sun, right? And then you have connected to each earth are the various realms of being. So you have the Peta Loka, you have the various heavenly realms going up to Brahma Loka. They are connected to that world system. That is called one world system. And then the Buddha says, well, there are 1,000 such world systems. This basically means like a solar system, right? There are 1,000 like that. And then there's the middling world system, which is 1,000 to the second power. That's 1,000,000 of these solar systems. And it says there is like the large kind of world system, which is 1,000 to the third power. In other words, 1,000,000,000, yeah, of these, basically these solar systems. So he's saying there is 1,000,000,000 solar systems, and all of them have all the various realms of existence, including like human beings, right? So the Buddha said there is always aliens out there. So the Buddha said that there's aliens. He said that 2,500 years ago. Yeah, there's planets, solar systems, aliens, the world contracts and expands, the sun eats up the earth ultimately. How's that possible, man? It's kind of really extraordinary. Even in the present day, we don't actually know that there are aliens out there. We think maybe there is. And there's kind of more and more evidence. I don't know if you saw some of the evidence coming out of US Congress with all this kind of UAPs, whatever they call them these days. So quite likely there are beings out there. Yeah. But the Buddha said already this a long, long time ago. Why didn't we just listen to the Buddha? Right, the Buddha obviously is a kind of extraordinary person. Maybe we should take it more seriously there. But certainly when the Buddha says there is rebirth, that is a really good reason to think there is a rebirth. Someone with a mind like that, gee, is someone really, really, really special there. So these things are really hard to explain. Yeah, I wrote a little book and gave a talk about this. It's called Buddhist Cosmology. And I gave various possible explanations so that these have been added to the suttas after we knew about these things. Actually, that's impossible. That these are just by accident happen to be the same thing. It seems very unlikely. I guess you would have to be a statistician or something to make the calculations, but it seems very, very unlikely. And you're really left with the sense that the Buddha knew things 2,500 years ago that even now are kind of, we don't even know fully. So that's kind of extraordinary. But what is even more extraordinary is that the Buddha didn't talk about this for the sake of talking about these things. When the Buddha talks about these things, it is for the sake of talking about something much more important, which is impermanence, dukkha, dependent origination, understanding what to do with our lives. That is why he talks about these things. He's not speculating. He's not talking about these things to show off his knowledge or whatever. They are used to make a larger point, which is about the practice and the nature of life, etc. All right. More drinks. Wow. I must have made some very good karma in the past. So that's sadhu. That's very, very kind of it. Peppermint. Okay. Excellent. It's kind of terrible. You don't have any drinks. I have two. Isn't that? That's really unfair, isn't it? How can you have a little bit of drink? Okay, good. All right. So here we go. Hello, Ajahn. Hello. Many thanks for your teaching. Sometimes we do realize that what we are thinking and doing may not be entirely wholesome, but are powerless to do anything because of deep conditioning, which may be due to our past karmas, our circumstances. How can we change this conditioning if we are so conditioned to do unwholesome? Many thanks, Ajahn. Slowly, yeah, gradually, stage by stage. Don't do things that you know you can do. So there are certain things you can always do. So you start with the simple things. You start with those things that you can change, like your speech, like your actions. Yeah, you can always do something in that area. If you find speech difficult, speak less. This is always a winner. Yeah, speaking. We speak too much, eventually something bad comes out of our mouth. That's what the nature of speech. So the less we speak, the more likely you will not say anything bad. So you start with the obvious things, bodily actions and speech, and then you move on to the mind, and you learn how to deal with the mind. You just go stage by stage, and indeed, don't judge yourself if you can't do everything straight away, because by judging yourself, it actually makes it worse. So instead, just do the things that you can do, and slowly, I guarantee you that you will change. It's one of the strange things about us is that because of our sense of self, we cannot see the potential for change sometimes. Yeah, we think that what we are, we will also have to be in the future. That is what the sense of self does. It gives a sense of permanence to us. And so when we think that we cannot change because of our unwholesome qualities, don't buy into that. It is not really true. The reality is that we can change enormously, and we are just not able to see how much we can change. And there was an interesting study that was done some time ago that I read about recently. It was a very interesting study. And this study said to people, well, if you look back in time, 10 years back in time, and you look at your life, what does it look like? And people say, oh, I changed a lot, yeah, because of this and that, so I changed, and I became better or worse or whatever. So people can see, going back in time, people can see how they changed, right? And how they became a person now. They can see the change quite clearly. Then the same people will told, well, look at yourself 10 years into the future. What kind of person do you see yourself as 10 years from now? And they were not able to see the change. They could see, in 10 years, I will be roughly the same. I will maybe change a little bit on the edges, but basically I will be the same person I am now. So when we look into the past, because it is a given, because it is factual, we can see the change. But if we have to imagine where we're going to be in the future, we are not able to see change into the future. We imagine ourselves to be largely what we are like now. And this is the delusion of the self, which actually forces us or stops us from seeing how changeable we actually are. So remember that, yeah, it is an illusion when things seem permanent into the future like this. So we will change, you will change. And if you practice in the right way, there will be massive changes in the conduct and the way you are. Yeah, so this is just the way it has to be and the way it goes. So you just do incrementally, and as the increments add up, eventually you are a completely different person down the track. All right, so we have one more question there. Ajahn, you mentioned yesterday about the wrong view leading to depression. I have been meditating for years and have a fair understanding of the 𝐷𝐴, Four Noble Truths, dependent origination, but I still feel very low at times. Obviously, these profound teachings are not yet visceral with me, leading to delusions and wrong view. How to develop right view so as to avoid all defilements, especially depression. Much gratitude at that. Okay, so with depression, you have to know what kind of wrong view it is that you have. Yeah, it is not necessarily going to help to believe in rebirth or to believe in the Four Noble Truths or have that kind of right view. With depression, you have to understand what is it going wrong there? And what is going wrong is often that maybe you feel that you are inadequate, that you are not living up to the standards you would like to live up to, that you feel that you are heading in the wrong direction, that the future is not looking good, that the world is going down the drain. Maybe it is going to no, maybe it's going to rain. Maybe I don't know. But all these feelings, yeah, this is what often leads to depression. Yeah, and so you have to look at yourself. Why? What is going on with me? Where am I thinking wrongly? Yeah. And so what you have to do is to remember that actually you are the product of your conditioning. Accept yourself for what you are. It is not your fault that you have the qualities that you have. Don't try to be someone you cannot be. You have to be who you are, including your depression, including all the negative things in you, warts and all, as they say. Yeah, this is who you are. Accept that, embrace that. This is the past, making itself felt in the present through the past conditioning. Yeah, and this you cannot be anything otherwise. So come to this acceptance of who you are. And the delusion there is that somehow you have the ability to make yourself different from what you are. This is the self-view which gets in the way. Yeah, you are powerful to make change and all of these kind of things. No, you don't have that power. Accept it. Accept the way things are. They are. This is you who you are, and it's okay to be the way you are. You don't have to be different from that. And so this is self-acceptance. Then about the future, remember that the way you create the future are by being here on this retreat, learning about the Dhamma, doing some meditation practice, practicing kindness, generosity, compassion, understanding, metta, all of these beautiful qualities, contentment, reducing your bad qualities. You are doing all the right things right now to create a good future for yourself. Yay! Yeah, be happy about that. It's wonderful. You're heading in the right way. The future is bright. You know it is bright because you're putting in the bright courses. It doesn't matter whether you think or not you're putting in the right things. You are, because that's what it means to be here. You are going to get brainwashed whether you want to or not. This is what brainwashing does. You have no idea it's happening. It's still happening under the surface. Haha, evil. No, it's not evil at all, right? Because it's actually good brainwashing. You're choosing the good brainwashing. It's your business. So what about the world? Seeing that the world is going the wrong way. Again, it doesn't matter now, because in the end, your future is determined by your inner qualities. That is what is going to create a good future for you now. So this is what I mean by delusion in this case. Yeah? Don't think of delusion or wrong view in terms of the just the Four Noble Truths. That's too theoretical. Think more directly about how you look at the world and whether that is in accordance with the Dhamma or not. Yeah, and then you straighten out those views and you straighten out the way you think about things. And then you reduce those down periods that you have and you get more and more up periods instead. All right. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the questions for today. And there are a lot of questions, so we'll see how far we get there. But so here we go. Dear Ajahn, I'm quite new to retreats and would like to request for some instructions on how best to conduct myself outside of our group sessions. I'm keeping the 8 precepts with noble silence. Excellent. Good on you. Good on you is an Australian expression. What I have attempted so far is spend more time in seclusion, like meditating in my room or the hall, quiet walks to the beach, being mindful while walking between locations, minimizing sensory input, including reading, but especially phone usage. Thank you for clarifying that. May your cough subside soon. Yes, thank you. This sounds good. Yeah, it sounds like you are doing largely many good things. This is the kind of the recipe for, I would say, having a nice retreat. Yeah, it's nice that you are keeping noble silence. Do it in a good way. Make sure you keep noble silence because you enjoy it and you feel good about it. And from what you're saying here, it sounds basically that's what you're doing. So that's great. Meditating in the room or the hall is good. Please carry on with that. And make sure that you enjoy it to the maximum. Don't force yourself to meditate if you don't feel like it, because that is the sure path to giving up altogether down the track, because actually it is no fun. And then it becomes counterproductive. Quiet walks to the beach are good. Yeah, that's just have a bit of kind of time just for walking around, mindful, minimizing, put away the phone, excellent, absolutely put away the phone. That is really crucial. Reading is not necessarily as bad, depending on what you read. If you read things that are encouraging and related to the Dhamma, then that is actually often useful even there. So I would say good. Yeah, the most important thing is to try to enjoy the time. And if you feel that you are no longer enjoying it, then do something else. Go for a walk, have another cup of tea. You can see how many cup of teas I have. Yeah, so you are in good company. I'm assuming here that I'm good company, but assuming that I'm good company, you are in good company. So yeah, so do things that make the experience enjoyable. And you know, this is one of the things that is so nice when you have a teacher like, you know, I have like Ajahn Brahmali. We all have our Ajahn Brahmali as our teacher. I've had him for 30 years now. And it's one of the wonderful things about Ajahn Brahmali. Yeah, he always kind of makes you laugh and have a good time with him. And he's also very peaceful at the same time. There's all these beautiful qualities coming out. Yeah, and he does that on purpose so that you can enjoy the time, yeah, on retreat. And sometimes, you know, you go on Ajahn Brahmali retreat at Jhana Grove and it's kind of everyone's just laughing. It's good, right? Because then when you laugh, you relax. And when you relax, you learn the Dhamma, then you enjoy meditation. Everything comes together in a nice way here. And it is like Ajahn Brahmali always says, he said that on at the global conference we had just now as well, that the sign of you know, someone who's practicing well is that they are happy, yeah, they are not miserable, and this is a good sign usually. Yeah. All right. Dear Ajahn, what should we do if we are approached by people trying to convert us to other religions? Should we just politely decline or use it as an opportunity to pick holes in their beliefs and show them the Dhamma? That is my strategy. If someone wants to convert me, I say, please come and convert me. I would love to have a conversation with you, and I will prove to you which religion is the better. This is kind of my, yeah, very rarely people try to convert me, so don't get a chance. But sometimes you can test yourself a little bit, right? You don't get into a bad argument, because that is very bad idea. But if someone wants to have a discussion with you, have a discussion, yeah? And say, okay, listen, right? You're saying this, but what you're saying, maybe there's another way of looking at this, or does this really make sense? Here is an alternative viewpoint. If you start to feel hot, leave the discussion. Yeah, don't carry on that. But as long as you can do it with kindness and compassion and trying to help the other person, why not? Yeah, sometimes it's good. And sometimes we learn something also when we engage in discussion with other religions. You learn something more about the Dhamma very often when we engage in these kind of discussions. Yeah, so whatever, there's no right or wrong with this. Walking away is okay. Engaging in discussion is okay, as long as you do it with the right attitude, then it's all right. Okay, why is the four sublime states not part of the 37 factors of enlightenment? So what you are asking is the four Brahma Viharas, the four sublime qualities, why are they not part of the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas, the 37 aids to awakening? And I think to say that they are not part of it is probably, I think we could maybe argue that they are not directly mentioned, but that they kind of come under some of the other factors. Yeah, so the sublime states could come under things like right intention, for example, on the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, intentions of metta and karuna, of non-ill will. They're kind of part of that, at least in the, excuse me, in the earlier stages. And then in the higher stages of the path, I would say that they are very closely related to the four jhanas, for example. Yeah, they are, if you practice these things fully, they will often lead to and they will be closely related to the four jhanas, and even related to the immaterial attainments, which actually are not part of the 37 factors, but never mind. So I would say that they are kind of implied, but not directly mentioned. Yeah, so why is that? And I think the reason is because the Buddha focuses on the critical aspects of the path. And the critical aspects are the four jhanas, the deep samadhis, and these other things can be helpful, but they're not absolutely required.
Ajahn,
Yes,
Pekka is actually part of jhana.
that is, it is part of the four jhanas. Also, yeah, that's right. It's also part of the 7 factors of awakening, right? The 𝐁𝐫𝐚𝐡𝐧. Yeah, so 𝐁𝐫𝐚𝐡𝐧 is kind of is there in a sense. That's true. So the 4th of the Brahma Viharas is talked about. Yeah, yeah, good point. Yes. All right. Okay, dear Ajahn, can you please give an overview of the Buddha's core teaching? It would be nice to have a blueprint of the entire teaching instead of bits and pieces like the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, etc. So an overview of the Buddha's core teaching. So I would say the overview can be found like in the, for example, the Buddha's last words, before he passed away. And that would be Vaya Dhamma Sankhara Apamadena Sampadeta. All things are liable to end. Practice on with diligence, something like that. That is a nice overview. And that means that the right view of the world is everything is impermanent, everything is unreliable, everything is uncertain. This is a nice overview. And then from that, you practice, strive on with diligence. Well, what is that practice? What is the overview of that practice? It is the purification of the mind. So the right view, first of all, everything is impermanent. Right practice, purification of the mind. That is one way of thinking about the overview of the Dhamma. Another way of thinking an overview of the Dhamma is Sabbe Dhamma Nalang Abhinivesaya, which means and nothing is worth holding on to. This is kind of a standard way of expressing the Dhamma you see around the world. Another way of thinking about an overview of the Dhamma. But I think the easiest one is everything is impermanent. The consequences of that is you want to purify the mind. 2 things. That's a nice way of thinking about it. And everything else kind of fits into that. That's one random way. So there you are. Okay, next one. The 4 foundations, establishments of mindfulness are deemed as the direct path to realization. As someone who likes to apply the Pareto principle, may I know if I can direct 80% of my spiritual practice to this? Rather, what would be the 20% of the thing to practice to achieve the 80% of the result? Okay, the Pareto principle. Now I'm not sure what that Pareto principle actually is, but it's obviously something to do with 20 and 80% here. So the 4 establishments are the direct path. It depends on how you translate the Pali. The Pali here is the Ekayana Magga, and it is translated in different ways. One translation is the direct path. Another translation is the path leading to one. It's quite different translation, right? So that kind of means that it's different. What does a path leading to one mean? It means leading to samadhi. And we know that all mindfulness meditation leads ultimately to samadhi. That is an alternative translation of that particular phrase. So don't worry too much about this idea that the 4 establishings of mindfulness, the 4 satipatthanas, that they are the direct path to realization. Don't think too much about that, because really what is the path to realization is the Noble Eightfold Path. That is what you should be focusing on. and the four satipatthanas are only one factor among the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, think like that instead, and then you are on the right track. Yeah? And the four foundations of mindfulness is really what you do on a meditation retreat. I know that people say that we do it in daily life by being aware and all of these kind of things, but I don't think that's true. I think that is really not actually what the Dhamma is saying at all. If you start to read the Satipatthana Sutta, and the way it talks about meditation, it says that anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, is the main way to fulfill all the four satipatthanas, right? Well, mindfulness of breathing, where does that happen? Does it happen in daily life? No, it happens when you sit down on your bottom, you close your eyes, you establish mindfulness, and you watch the breath. That is when it happens. And the rest of the time, our job is to keep our minds pure and purify them more. And that is what I would recommend you to do in daily life, rather than just to be aware of what you're doing. Sometimes this idea of just being aware of what you're doing, ding, 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 lifting, 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 lifting. Why? What does that do? Yeah, the idea seems to be that if you are mindful in daily life, then somehow that will translate into mindfulness in meditation. That seems to be the idea, right? So mindful, 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 mindful. And then when you close your eyes, you're already mindful, so you carry on. But actually, the Buddha doesn't say that. He doesn't say that by being generally mindful, you will then be mindful when you meditate. The Buddha said there are two things that lead to mindfulness. There are two things that support meditation. Right view and sila and ujjhaya. These are the two things. So what we should focus on in our daily life is, first of all, having the right view about things, which is what we learn on a retreat like this, or when you read the suttas or whatever. And then we should focus on sila, which really is about kindness. These are the things that we should focus on in daily life. And so if we have mindfulness in daily life, the purpose of that mindfulness in daily life should be so that we monitor our mind and our actions, so we can live with greater morality, live with greater kindness. That is the purpose of mindfulness in daily life. We shouldn't just be mindful for the sake of mindfulness. Yeah, and I think this is such an important idea and view and understanding of the Dhamma. And the more pure you are in daily life, the more peaceful you become when you come on a meditation retreat like this. So put aside this whole idea of Satipatthana being the direct path. Yeah, it is uncertain what exactly that means. All we know is that the Noble Eightfold Path is the path to awakening. Is eva maggo nati annyo. Just this is the path, there is no other. Yeah, as Dhammapada verse number, can't remember. One verse in Dhammapada. And that is actually the path. That is part of the Four Noble Truths. And it's a great danger, this overemphasis on Satipatthana in the world, coming from the Vipassana movement. If we get it wrong, it may hinder us in our practice. So we have to be careful to think about these things in the right way. Okay, so I'm going to put the Pareto principle to one side and move on to the next principle, whatever that might be. So, dear Ajahn, I have random mental images when I meditate. Yesterday, when my mind was still very unsettled, I saw dancing blue worms. That's very interesting, isn't it? Dancing blue worms. Okay. I let them go. Okay, you didn't let them dance, you let them go, I guess. Today, when my mind was more calm and as I could follow my breath, I saw golden mushroom, like objects rising. It's nice and soothing. Should I let it go, or should I just watch it together with the breath? Thank you, Ajahn. Wow, you have a very visual mind, obviously. I never see any of these things, which is so that's good. So what you do really, stay with the breath. Don't force these things out of your mind. If they want to stay in your mind, just leave them kind of in the background, but make the breath the main object. And then these things will be there, but then as you calm down, these things will eventually fade away here. The more peaceful your mind is, the less you'll have of these kind of images. But I must admit, it does sound very entertaining. So, so, and if it is, as we say, if it is soothing and nice, then certainly don't push them out of your mind. Yeah. Breath, the main object. These things are secondary. Allow them to fade away gradually over time. Dear Ajahn, in the sutta today, could you kindly explain why it says the 5 grasping aggregates instead of just saying the 5 aggregates? Tak, tak, okay? Wow, someone is speaking Norwegian here. I'm not sure what that is. Tak means thank you in Norwegian there. That's pretty cool then. So, okay, so the reason it says 5 grasping aggregates, I think the idea is to say something about the nature of these aggregates. Yeah, something about how we experience them. So 5 aggregates are specifically the kind of aggregates that we grasp. There are other aggregates, say the aggregates of another person, right? Or something else, which are not grasping aggregates from our point of view. So it is about the particular things that we are grasping. And that, I think, is the reason why we find it in this way. And as I mentioned before earlier on, the idea here of grasping is quite not entirely clear exactly what it refers. It seems to refer to a number of things, that they have been grasped at the moment of birth, so that's why they come into existence, that we continue to grasp them during life until we become enlightened, in which case the grasping stops, and the fact that the aggregates themselves do the grasping, yeah, it refers to all of these kind of things. So it is a specific set of aggregates that we grasp, which is usually that which refers to ourself, right? Not to any other aggregates outside of that. I think that is kind of the point here. All right. Hello, Ajahn. Vipassana meditation seems to be a pretty important kind of meditation, but there seems to be little mention of it in the suttas. Why is that so? Please elaborate it versus samatha. Thank you. So Vipassana meditation, the word Vipassana meditation does not even exist in the suttas. It's a modern word invented by modern meditation teachers. And it doesn't, in the suttas, what you find is Vipassana and Samatha, but you never find Vipassana meditation or Samatha meditation. All there is meditation. That is often called bhavana in the suttas. Bhavana means development, making something exist, making something grow. That is bhavana. So Vipassana and Samatha, instead of being meditations, they are qualities of the mind that arise out of successful practice. If you practice in the right way, 2 things happen, Samatha and Vipassana. Samatha is the calm and the peace that you experience. Vipassana is the clarity of mind that sees things more clearly. Yeah? And both of these things happen when meditation works in the right way. So, for example, if you do mindfulness of breathing, and the mindfulness of breathing is working in the right way, you have 2 results. You become more peaceful, calm, samatha, but also you get more clarity of the mind, so you see things more clearly, so you also have vipassana. So any practice that you do should have both of these results. And when it has both of these results, you get both samatha and vipassana together. So it makes it very simple, right? Watching the breath is not a samatha practice specifically. It is both of these practices coming together. That is why the Buddha says all you have to do is watch the breath. That will take you all the way to awakening. You don't need to do any other vipassana practice or anything like that. Of course, when we do the breath meditation, we also try to contemplate also. Right? So when you come to the end of the breath meditation, it is good to review that meditation. What happened? How did it work? Right? Reflecting back, why was I so happy here during this meditation? Or maybe because dukkha disappeared. What did disappear? Well, body disappeared a little bit, the hindrances were not there. I gave up, my mind became more peaceful, so thinking is obviously suffering. Yeah, you gave up a lot of things, and that giving up of things, that is what made you happy. And then you start to understand there's something about the nature of the body and the mind, the things that are dukkha and the things that are sukha. What is suffering and what is happiness. You start to understand simply by looking back on that meditation experience. Certain things have disappeared. That means they must have been impermanent, right? If the body is completely gone, if the body is nirodha, which means ceased, you cannot access the body, that is complete impermanence. So you understand the cessation of things, the impermanence of things. When that is impermanent, it's gone. You feel more happy, so the body was dukkha. If you cannot access the body because your meditation is so deep, it is non-self, because anything that is self has to be accessible to you. If something is beyond access, by definition, it is non-self. So simply by looking back on your experience like this, understanding the nature of the mindfulness of breathing, the calming down of things in this way, you gain insight into the three characteristics, how they relate to your body and mind. In other words, how they relate to your five khandhas. And it often is automatic, yeah? It will kind of be obvious to you what is going on. It's kind of, okay, the body is gone, it's happy, it's impermanent, kind of course. Yeah, it's not really something that you have to think all that much about. It's just kind of clear when you see it. So you become peaceful, calm, your mind gains clarity, you see more clearly what is going on. This leads to more peace, more calm, and in this way, the whole thing becomes very powerful after a while. So why is this the case? Why is it that samatha and vipassana always go together? And it's very simple. It's because they have the same cause. What is the cause of the mind becoming peaceful? The cause is a reduction in defilements. Yeah, if the mind has a lot of desire or ill will or whatever, the mind will not be peaceful. Desire by its very nature is not peaceful. Desire is about the future. It's about the mind wanting to be somewhere else. Ill will is often about the past, the mind going into the past. Right? So desire and ill will, by definition, are not peaceful qualities of mind. So the less defilements you have in the mind, the more peaceful you are. And that is why we're trying to overcome the five hindrances, because these are the things that the defilements that disturb the peace of the mind. Equally so, the defilements are what stop clear seeing. If you have desires, the mind is biased. It is biased by those desires because you think they are important, and the mind will move towards those desires. If you have ill will, your mind is also biased because you have a negative view of someone. It is biased against that person. And so if there are defilements in the mind, you cannot see clearly and you're not peaceful. By reducing the defilements, you become more peaceful and you see more clearly. And meditation is all about overcoming defilements. It is about purifying the mind. If you read the Satipatthana Sutta, someone mentioned the establishing of mindfulness before, you will realize it is all about overcoming defilements. Yeah, that is really what it is about. And as you overcome the defilements, you get more peace and you get more clear seeing. Samatha and vipassana coming together because of that. So all we have to do is practice the Noble Eightfold Path. And as you do that, everything happens as a consequence. So keep it simple, basically. All right, so let us go on to the next one. Hey, Ajahn, are you able to explain how karma follows us from life to life? Is it attached to our consciousness? Thank you. So the idea of karma is, I think the easiest way to understand it is to understand how it works within this present life. The Buddha talks about three kinds of karma. Karma means action. and actions have results, and that is called vipaka or phala. Phala means fruit, vipaka means result. Yeah, so there's karma, action, and then there is result from those actions. And there's three kinds of karma. There's the karma that leads to results in this life. There's a karma which leads to results in the next life. And there's karma which leads to the results in the lives beyond that. And so what does it mean that karma has results in this life? And what it means, a simple way of thinking about it, is that if you have good intentions and you live well, you will feel good about yourself right here in this very life. Yeah? This is karma in this life. It means you feel good about yourself because the result of good intentions is feeling good about yourself. Now, if you live well in this way, you feel good about yourself, when you die, you're also going to feel good about yourself. And it means, in a sense, that what you have done during life is like you have lifted up your consciousness. You've made your consciousness more bright and more light. And because of that, when you die, it's like you are already on a higher plane, in a sense. Your mind is already on a higher plane in existence, so when you die, that is where your mind is, and it just carries on that high plane, which means a higher rebirth, because you're already mentally at a higher level. So it just carries on from there. This is how karma moves from one life to the next one. It's kind of natural. The inclination of the mind is already towards a high realm because you have a bright mind. And then it just carries on, and you are automatically in that new realm. Not really going anywhere, the mind is already there. The body goes, bang, you're there. Yeah, and this is how karma kind of goes from one life to the next one. There's nothing really all that magic about it. It's kind of the natural inclination of the mind. And then, of course, because it's like karma is very strong, you bring that happiness with you, maybe through the whole next life as well. So then when you get reborn next time, that karma is still there because you did many, many good things. And then you get reborn again in a good destination. But eventually you lose that memory, the power of that karma, then some older karma will take hold, and then maybe you get reborn in a bad place again in the future. Something like that. We often hear monks having relics appear or seeing nagas, devas. Personally, what is your take on these? Have you seen them? If so, any stories to share? Thank you. Yes, it is. Sometimes you often hear about relics appearing or whatever. And I don't know, maybe this happens. They say relics kind of dividing or multiplying in these things is quite a common phenomenon, apparently. How does that happen? Don't know. Maybe the devas come and give you an extra relic. I'm not sure. It's possible. But I would also caution people to be a little bit skeptical about these things because they are usually stories. And one of the things that I have noticed in my life, which is kind of very interesting, is that whenever you hear a supernormal story, it is never the person who has actually done it or was there, who tells the story. The story is always about someone else. That makes me a little bit skeptical. Why is it always about someone else? And then you go, it's always a bit dodgy. And some typical example is, one of the things that I like to do, because I tend to be skeptical because there's too much nonsense sometimes. And so, for example, people think that someone is reading their mind, right? It's a very common thing to say. And so people say, oh, monk so-and-so was reading my mind. And I say, how do you know? Well, because they were giving the Dhamma talk, they were talking to me, right? Or that kind of thing. And then what I do then, I go to that monk, and I say, did you read the mind of this other person? And they say, no, I didn't read their mind. This is always the result, right? Always the result. And sometimes I have to admit, sometimes there are experiences where really you do feel like someone is really inclined. I have to admit that occasionally things are just too kind of awesome and amazing. But usually these things are exaggerated. And so can relics divide? Are there ways for these things to happen? Maybe, I don't know, possibly. But, you know, so what if you get an extra relic? The Buddha said we should not really worship the body of the Buddha anyway, and that's exactly what we do. We go around worshiping these relics as if they have some kind of special meaning or special power or whatever. And really, it is sometimes we take it way, way too far. It is nice to bow down to the Buddha, because when you bow to the Buddha, you're bowing to qualities that we want to develop in ourselves. And by the very fact of bowing to those qualities, we are actually developing them. Because we're paying respect to them, it means that we're taking them seriously and we develop them through bowing in this way. So bowing to the Buddha is actually a very powerful thing, which is very helpful. But too much of this relic stuff and all of these kind of things, I sometimes think that if you take all the relics, Buddha relics in the world, and you put them in a big pile, it is enough to make tens of Buddhas, right? There's so many relics that, you know, it's just way, way more than the size of the Buddha already. So you wonder, where do all these relics come from? Have they got any relationship to the Buddha whatsoever? That's kind of my skeptical mind. Yes, there are some Buddha relics that are more authentic, like some of the ones found in India, for example. And what is interesting about those Buddha relics is that they actually look like real bones. They don't look like this kind of crystallized things. That is kind of fascinating. And maybe those are real. But I think we kind of need not to take these things too seriously, to be honest. Seeing Nagas and Devas, this I think is much more likely to happen. And yes, because these are, as far as I'm concerned, real beings, right? And so because they exist, and if your mind is powerful enough, then you will actually see these things. And yes, I have absolutely heard of people seeing these kind of beings, and I know personally people have told me directly that they have seen them, and I have very good reason to think that that is true. So yes, what do Nagas and Devas look like? And actually, you can go to the suttas to find this out. Yeah, and the suttas say that they look a little bit like nimittas. It's you see a form and you see a light, and a form and a light is basically what a deva would look like. So similar to a nimitta in samadhi, you get a bright light of some kind, and that can be a deva. So you need to be able to distinguish between whether it's a deva or it's a samadhi nimitta. Yeah, so you have to kind of learn that distinction as you during your practice. So if you're not sure, then it's kind of exciting. But this is what happens. And so these beings are there, so of course you can experience them. If you couldn't experience them, it would be strange, and you would have grounds for doubt whether these things really exist or not. So it is a part of the Buddha's awakening experience. He says that he didn't call himself fully enlightened until he had gone to the various deva realms, talked with the various devas, asked them what kind of happiness do you have, what kind of karma did you do to get reborn here, having a good talk with them, chatting with the devas, and only when he understood the whole kind of build-up of all the various realms, how you get there, what they are like, how long they last, all of these things, did he really call himself fully awakened to the nature of the world. Yeah. So, but, you know, if you want to go and kind of get some nice stories about supernormal things, one of the monks who is kind of interesting to go and talk to is someone like Ajahn Brahmali. He's kind of, he has a very bright mind. And when you go and visit him, that is where you kind of find maybe someone is reading your mind. Yeah, if you go and visit Ajahn Brahmali, he's kind of awesome in that sense. I don't know if you had many people have been to visit Ajahn Brahmali in Thailand. Some of you, no, you haven't seen him? Okay, I'm one of the back there. Yeah, you have seen him, right? Been there. And he is kind of a very powerful person. And okay, I'll tell you a little story when I visited him, because one of the things when you go to Ajahn Brahmali, one of the first things that you should say when you go there, this is a secret tip for everyone, yeah? And this is, say that you are a disciple of Ajahn Brahmali, yeah? Because he's close to Ajahn Brahmali and he will look after you when you go there. So that's what I did. I went there. He knew I was coming to Bodhidharma Monastery. Of course, it helps to be a monk as well. It certainly helps. So he gave me a big chair just next to him. And so I was sitting on this big chair with drinks and all kind of things, and sitting right next to Ajahn Brahmali, and all the other people that came with me from Perth were also there. And so Ajahn Brahmali is there. He always is so nice to be around because he has so much metta, so much kindness. But he does all kind of strange things. Yeah, he has this long stick, 3-meter long stick, and he touches you on the head. Ding! Yeah, it's a blessing. He blesses you by touching you on the head in this way. And then he has this thing about throwing sweets out into the audience and all these kind of things. But one of the things that happened to me, I was sitting there, I was watching Ajahn Brahmali. And I am this kind of, no, maybe I'm not sure, am I cynical? I'm not cynical. I think I'm just, I like to kind of investigate a little bit. Yeah, I don't want to take things too much for granted. So I'm kind of looking at Ajahn Brahmali to see what he really is like. And as I was sitting there and watching him, the thought came to my mind, and this is kind of a little bit, not very respectful perhaps, but the thought came to mind, looking at him, he's getting quite old and he was quite fat, yeah, when I was there. Yeah. So the thought came to me, actually, Ajahn Brahmali, I didn't say this, just thinking, actually, you're quite ugly, you know? But even though you're ugly, yeah, even though you're outer being, actually you're still very beautiful, because your spiritual qualities are so powerful that despite your kind of superficial ugliness, you are a very beautiful person regardless. That was what I was thinking, right? So I was kind of watching Ajahn Brahmali this way here. And as soon as I had that thought, Ajahn Brahmali turns, there's this old lady sitting on the other side, opposite from me here. And he turns to this old lady here. And he says to this old lady, he says to her, well, you know, even if you get old and ugly, you can still be beautiful because of your spiritual qualities. And I thought, what? And that was kind of amazing. I was really, I mean, this is not, and then, so, and of course, then the meeting continued, and he kind of pretended as if nothing had happened, and I didn't know what to think. And after the meeting, I went to the translator. And I said to the translator, is this something that he says to people kind of regularly, that this sort of thing? And he said, I never heard him say this before, so this was something really unusual there. And that was kind of an experience where I really felt like somebody was reading your mind, right? And what is interesting about the fact when someone like that reads your mind is that you don't feel scared, yeah, because someone like that, they have so much metta. So even if you think like you're going to kill them or something, yeah, they still have metta towards you, right? It doesn't matter what you think. And so you're not really worried about it. This is kind of the beautiful thing. So you're there, you don't really, it doesn't feel oppressive, it doesn't feel like you have to be careful or anything. Yeah, it is still okay. Yeah. So, but sometimes it makes you a little bit self-conscious when you are in that kind of company. Yeah. So go and check out Ajahn Brahmali, ask him some pointed questions, yeah, and ask him to tell you some supernatural stories. And usually, probably he'll just dismiss you, but maybe you get something interesting when you ask him these questions. You know, Ajahn Brahmali, the famous stories with Ajahn Brahmali. You know some of those stories, right? The one where patting the snake on the head, you know that one. Famous story, Ajahn Brahmali tells that story. Is anyone who hasn't heard that story? We haven't heard a story? Really? Wow, okay, you'll be missing out. Okay, I'll tell it for your sake, especially. So this is a story. Ajahn Brahmali was very famous for traveling around Thailand. They would go what they call tudong, which basically means walking by foot around from village to village. And they would stop at a suitable village and they would stay there overnight. So they would stop where they came to this one village and they would kind of retire into the forest. And so the next morning, they could then go in for alms to the village if they wanted to. But then in the evening in the forest, they sit down and they meditate as a group. Ajahn Brahmali is there and all these monks are there. And then as they are meditating, this king cobra comes towards them, right? And Ajahn Brahmali sees this king cobra, and this king cobra comes closer and closer and closer. King cobras are really dangerous. Have you got them here in Singapore? No? So maybe occasionally, very rarely. They are, in Thailand, they are called the one-step snake. Because you take, after they bite you, you've got one step and then you're dead. Yeah? That's kind of what's called the one-step snake. So they are really scary and they are very fast. You can't outrun them. If they kind of slither at maximum speed, they will catch you, right? They're really scary. They can become enormous. And so this king cobra comes up and it heads towards Ajahn Brahmali, yeah, not the rest of the group. I'm not sure why, maybe it likes the metta or whatever, but who comes towards Ajahn Brahmali. Now, I have to tell you straight away, this is a story that Ajahn Brahm tells, and Ajahn Brahm's stories they tend to inflate over time, but anyway, so you may have noticed that yourself. But anyway, this story has been fairly consistent over time, so I take it to be fairly reliable. So the snake comes closer and closer to Ajahn Brahmali. Yeah, it goes all the way up to him. And then it raises up its hood, it spreads out its hood, right? And looking at Ajahn Brahmali almost straight in the eye like this. And Ajahn Brahmali looks back at this snake. And then Ajahn Brahmali, instead of being fearful and frightened, if you have that much metta that he has, this is a kind of his special qualities. He slowly raises his hand, takes his hand up, pats the king cobra on the head. Oh, thank you for coming to visit us, king cobra. It is nice of you to come. Now is the time for you to get down and move on. Pat, 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 pat. Metta, metta, metta. The king cobra doesn't know what to do. The king cobra is paralyzed, doesn't know what to do. So then the king cobra just comes down again and carries on and moves on to this is Ajahn Brahm's, I think, exaggeration, moves on to the next monk. The next monk does not have the same kind of reaction. So this is kind of interesting, right? And then when I was in Thailand, one of the other monks was in Thailand, Venerable Mudita. You know Venerable Mudita? He was one of the monks. He came to the global conference, one of the Perth monks. He's one of my close friends because he's also a Nordic monk. He's from Finland. So we have a similar kind of temperament, right? A Nordic temperament. We're quite cool and aloof kind of people. So this is kind of the Nordic temperament. Anyway, so we are quite close. And he actually, when he went to Ajahn Brahmali, he asked him about this snake. And he said, is it true? And Ajahn Brahmali said, well, if you want to find out if it's true, go off into the forest and ask the snake. That's what he said. So I'm not sure what that means. Is it true? Probably means there's something true to it. That is Ajahn Brahmali, the monk with so much metta that the king cobras even kind of fall in love with him. That is the Ajahn Brahmali story. Is it true? Don't know. Sounds good. Yes. You can offer what?
He got offered like 7 folk while he was somewhere.
Oh, that's another story about Ajahn Brahmali. Not 9 folks, 9 Pepsis. Because 9 is the magic number in Thailand. That is a very interesting story. You know that story about Ajahn Brahmali going on Tudong? This is a really beautiful little story, actually. And this is probably true. This is straight from Ajahn Brahm's mouth, and this is what he experienced. So this is one of those rare experiences where the person who experienced it actually tells the story. And so what Ajahn Brahm tells, he was on Tudong, he was walking around in Thailand, and he was getting very thirsty. And as he was getting very thirsty, he was approaching a village. And usually when you approach a village, there's usually a possibility of getting something to drink. There's usually a shop in the village and all of these kind of things. So as Ajahn Brahm was approaching the village, he was thinking to himself, well, if there are any devas in this world, I am a good monk, I'm practicing well. And Ajahn Brahm is a really, really good monk. If there's any good monk in this world, it is Ajahn Brahm. He's a really super duper monk, deep meditation, kind of the perfect monk almost, in so many ways, except for the weight, but otherwise. I'm just being silly. And so he thinks, yeah, if there is any devas in this world, please, can you ensure that I get a Pepsi or when I go to this village? Because Pepsis were what usually was sold in Thailand in the village shops at that time. Yeah, it was back in the 1970s. This was what Thailand was still a very, very poor and rural country. And so Pepsi was one of the things they had. And so then he walks into the village. And as he walks into the village, he comes to the village shop. It is just there, yeah. And nothing really happens. So Ajahn Brahm is a bit disappointed because this is what he expects the Pepsis to arrive, right? So he carries on. And then just as he's about to give up, this lady shouts out behind him, "Oh, Venerable, I want to offer you something." So he turns around and there's a lady there with a Pepsi. Yeah, offers him a Pepsi. And then a second lady comes out of the shop. She also wants to offer him a Pepsi. A third lady comes out. I'm not sure, maybe some of them are men as well. I'm not sure if they're all ladies. Some men and some ladies offer him a Pepsi. And eventually he has 9 Pepsis. 9 is the lucky number in Thailand, right? This is not a random number. So he goes into this village. He has asked the devas for help, and he gets 9 Pepsis. Right? That is kind of an extraordinary little story here. And it shows you that sometimes there are these kind of higher powers, yeah, that can look out for you and can kind of guide people in the right way. And this was also very similar to another story, which where I was actually present. This I could see with my own eyes. And this was a case where we were doing the Vesak celebration in Perth. And as we were about to do the Vesak celebration in May, the worst kind of rainfall in living memory was about to happen in Perth. The rainfall was so bad that the freeway, the highway into Perth, was flooded. That has never happened before, never happened since, but it happened on that day because the rain was so bad, really, really bad. And everyone was saying to Ajahn Brahm, we have to cancel the Vesak celebration. It was going to be in the Supreme Court Gardens, with high in the Supreme Court Gardens especially. We had all the kind of really speakers. The Premier of Western Australia was going to come and give a talk. It was really this really, really big event. Everyone saying, cancel, it's going to be the worst downpour in living memory in Perth. We cannot go ahead with this. Ajahn Brahm said, we will go ahead. That was Ajahn Brahm saying. And then he told me that what he did in the evening before this event, he meditated and he asked again, same as he did with the Pepsis, he asked the devas for a bit of support to make it work out, yeah? I don't think he probably never told anyone this, but he told me this. Don't tell him that I told you this. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this, right? So, and of course, and then we came to the Vesak day, and the sky was absolutely black with cloud, and it was pouring down everywhere, right? And then just as the Vesak celebration started a little bit beforehand, I looked up into the sky, and just as I looked up into the sky, the clouds kind of parted, yeah? Just over that area, the moon kind of came out, the rain stopped. We did the ceremony. As soon as the ceremony was over, the clouds went together and the rain poured down again afterwards. I thought, my goodness, is this natural or is this help from the divine beings? That really felt like there was some divine intervention. Yeah, it was just too good to be true. Could it have been a natural weather phenomenon? It is possible, but it seems very unlikely. Yeah. So these are the little things that make you feel that there are things in this world that are kind of have a certain power, right? Especially when I knew that Ajahn Brahm had kind of asked for a bit of assistance beforehand. I don't think that was, I think that just happened naturally. Yeah, I think so. That's why, yeah, that is my understanding. The fire brigade stopped that one, not Ajahn Brahm. So, yeah. Katina, exactly, for the Katina ceremony. Anyway, let's get back to the questions again, because we're now getting sidetracked. Okay, dear Ajahn, the mind does not really feel like meditating after a long, tiring day at work. There's also the shame, guilt feeling as I get impatient with people I work with. This week helps as I put work behind in Singapore. The sits have been helpful. What advice can you share to maintain, increase the motivation after the retreat? Okay, this is a good question. And really, if you don't feel like meditating, don't push yourself too much. Maybe try for a couple of minutes, and if you really is horrible or terrible, don't do it. Because again, all you're doing is creating aversion towards meditation. That makes the things even worse. So find a time when you are ready to meditate. Yeah, maybe on the weekend, maybe early in the morning, on Sunday morning or something like that, when you have a bit of rest. Yeah, that may be the time when you can do a bit of meditation practice. Make sure you enjoy it. One of the ways of helping you to get into meditation mood, one of the things you will notice on a retreat like this is that there is a kind of momentum when everyone comes together. Yeah, it is nice to sit in the company and feel that you're being pulled along with everyone else. And one way you can do that at home is to listen to a guided meditation by someone you really trust. Yeah, some of Ajahn Brahm's beautiful meditations. When he does it well, you feel really, really peaceful in that presence. So this is one way of helping you to make that work, because you have to establish that mood of meditation in your wherever you are staying. And then if you are able to do a bit of meditation like that, then you may get less impatient with the people you work with as well. Yeah, because your mind is more at ease, your mind is more relaxed, you have more compassion for the people around you. You know that people are doing their best. One of the really nice pieces of advice I heard recently was this business leader. And I didn't know business leaders were so smart, but sometimes they have some wisdom. Yeah? Some people are naturally good people. And what this business leader said was that when I look at the people in my company, I remind myself that everyone is doing their best. Yeah, everyone is doing their best. That's a beautiful way of thinking about people. Because if everyone is doing their best, it doesn't really make any sense to yell at them or to get impatient. They are conditioned in a certain way. Just like people do stupid things because of their conditioning. In the same way, some people may seem lazy or whatever because of their conditioning, but actually they are doing their best given that conditioning that they have. And so remember that. And when you remember that, instead of getting impatient with people, you ask yourself, how can I motivate them to do even better? Anger isn't going to work because anger assumes that they are lazy, that they can do better as long as they put their will into it. But that actually is not the problem. The problem is not enough willpower. The problem is not that they're not trying hard enough. The problem is that their conditioning is going in the wrong way. So how can I recondition them a little bit so as to make them, make a better effort for the company or whatever, yeah? You start to think in a new way when you know that they're already doing their best in a sense. So maybe if I'm kind to them, maybe if I tell them, actually, I really appreciate you as a colleague, you have done all of these things for the company, yeah? Well done. Maybe you can do a bit more. No, don't say that too soon, yeah, but you give them an opportunity to. When you show your appreciation, very often people will rise to that occasion and they will actually become better people. I have noticed with myself, when I'm treated really well by other people, like Ajahn Brahm really appreciates me, I want to show that I'm worthy of that appreciation, right? It's almost as if you want to live up to the appreciation and expectation of other people. So if you really show your appreciation for someone, quite likely they will want to live up to that appreciation that you have for them. So treating people well is often very powerful. Of course, it may not work. And if it doesn't work, you should not fall back on anger, because anger is still not going to work and be a positive thing. So you will have to accept that sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay, right? But you learn to accept people for what they are. Sometimes it is said that 10% of the people do 90% of the work or whatever. And sometimes we say that with the sense that some people are really good and hardworking while other people are lazy. But actually, that's not the right way of thinking about it. The reason why 10% of the people do 90% of the work is because they have that capacity. That is their conditioning. They have the ability to work really hard and make it work. Whereas the other people don't have the ability. They just can't do it. It may look lazy on the surface, but actually it is just the deep conditioning inside of them that stops them from being able to work in that way. And in this way, we can have a beautiful compassion for everyone there, and it actually makes everything work much better here. So please don't be impatient with your fellow workers, yeah? Give them the benefit of the doubt in this way here. Instead, be kind to them. Give them a pat on the shoulder. Give them a nice cup of tea. Yeah, maybe that's why I'm getting tea, because I'm too lazy here. I don't know. And then, yeah, things can hopefully work out for the better. And then you will also, when you come back home, you feel better about yourself, the meditation may come together, and everything starts to fall into place as a consequence. So something like that, and see what you can do. All right, evening, but many a times I see lay people who want to support or sponsor the monastics, but ended up being taken advantage of. Okay, for example, not confirming the length of stay in a layperson's premises, no fixed dates coming and going, asking for computer, laptop, and gifts, going shopping, asking sponsoring for overseas retreats, changing air tickets, not to return home base, but to another destination without informing the host beforehand. How do the sponsoring host handle their goodwill being abused and trapped in their compassionate act? Is there a rule book or guidance that you can share to wisen us? Thank you, Ajahn. So, yes, so remember that there is no obligation to support monastics, right? It is not as if this is what you have to do regardless. And if you feel taken advantage of and you continue supporting, eventually you become resentful and angry. And that is not nice. So better to say no. It is okay to say no, yeah? As a monastics, we should expect people to say no sometimes because it just isn't convenient or whatever. So recently I asked the Buddhist Fellowship, and I don't like asking for things usually because I find it kind of not nice to ask. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is okay, sometimes necessary. So I recently asked the Buddhist Fellowship whether they could sell a little book, which is going to the a new vihara for the nuns in Sydney. Yeah, it's a little book that is available also on this. Actually, this is my chance to advertise the book. Now I thought, good point. This is really sneaky, isn't it? Have you got the book there? So I asked the Buddhist Fellowship if they would be willing to sell this book to support this monastery in Sydney. This little book is actually based on some of my teachings. And this was put together by one of the nuns in that monastery in Sante to help support the fundraising for this thing. And so I asked the Buddhist Fellowship, and they very kindly agreed to that. But when I asked, I tend to be very clear in my mind. If the BF says no, of course, that's perfectly okay. I don't expect the Buddhist Fellowship to say yes to these kind of things. And that is really, thank you so much, Kim. And that is very important for every monastic. We should always expect the lay people to say no, and that is perfectly okay to say no if you are asking for something. And the asking for something should usually happen within certain limits. So the way that asking for something works as a monastic is that, first of all, the lay people should give you a invitation to ask, right? So if you want to support a monastic, give the monastic an invitation. Say that I will support you, and I will support you for so and so long. So say within the next year or something, and I will support you for these and these specific things, right? For travel to this destination, or for these kind of requisites, or for a certain amount of money, or whatever it is. So make it very clear. And the monastic is not really allowed to ask for things unless the lay people have made an invitation, right? That is a very important point right there. So this is one of the rules, actually, one of the Pachitya rules for monastics. So that already sets quite clear down. So if a monastic asks for something more, then already it's a bit dodgy, right? And that means that you are allowed to say no in those circumstances. Don't allow yourself to build up resentment and negativity. Say, I don't feel, actually, I don't really, say it in a nice way, right? I don't really feel it is, I don't want to spend that money in that way, or I don't feel it is appropriate, or whatever you say. You don't make any kind of, you just say it honestly, don't want to support that. That is fine. So, and this is true for all of these kind of things, right? And so if a monastic comes to stay in your premises, ask them beforehand how long they're going to stay there. Yeah, so you have a clear date. Set down the kind of the ground rules for these kind of things, and then it should be okay. Having said all of that, having said all of that, now I'm going to break all those rules by advertise something. So this is the booklet here called Flowing to Freedom. It's only a small little booklet. It has about, it's only about 100 pages long, and it has some nice artwork in it. Artwork was done by one of the nuns at this monastery. So she did all the artwork, and then she put together these things, and it has been nicely edited. And to my mind, it's quite a nice little book. Did anyone read this book already? You have? Was it nice? Did you enjoy it? Okay, so there is the, you have to write a book review, and we put that onto it. So the nice thing about this is that if you get some nice Dhamma, and you also get a chance to support a Bhikkhuni nuns monastery in Sydney at the same time. They have recently bought a city center. If you go to Perth, you know, we have the monastery in the bush and outside the city, and then we have a city center where we do the teachings. And it's similar for them in Sydney because they live in a monastery in the bush. They need a center in the city where they can do teachings and where the nuns can stay for doctor appointments and those kind of things. Yeah, so you're doing a double benefit if you feel like purchasing this book. I must admit, it's quite expensive, but it goes for a nice cause. So there you are. So just making that, just letting you know, basically. So there you are. All right, enough advertising. You can ask me to sign it. Okay, yes, you can ask me to sign it. It's already 9 o'clock here. So I think I'm going to stop there because 1.5 hours is probably enough. There's lots of questions left, but I promise to answer all those questions tomorrow. So for now, I wish you all a wonderful night. Please have a good night's rest and ready tomorrow morning for some more meditation. And we'll see you again for those who wish at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning.